All right, what is up, everybody? Welcome back to episode 16 of Golden Dice Podcast. This week, I have with me the taller, the better looking, the more intelligent of the two. I've got Tommy.
I am not sure that any of those statements are true. My brother may be taller than me. He's definitely better looking than me, and he's definitely smarter than me. So I got nothing.
Yeah, I don't even know who's taller.
I'm pretty sure it's close, but he might edge me out now. It's not a good feeling for a brother who's 9 years younger than you to be taller than you.
It's all right, dude. Things happen. You'll come back stronger next year.
Something like that. Yeah, I have dad strength now.
Dad strength. I'll shoot you up a few inches. So, Tommy, have you had a chance to play any Destiny in the past few weeks? I know you've been busy still.
I have. I did get to play some Destiny. Our friend Scott came over. He wanted to get out. He's been really busy with his schooling, and he wanted to get some gaming in and see our little guy over here. So he came over and visited with my Wi-Fi and little Tom, and we got about 4 games in. It was good. I played Thrawn Towson, and I played Ayla Poe 2. He played Hero Vehicles, and I think he played a Poe Hondo deck once as well. So it was good. We split 2 and 2, and it was nice and casual, but it was good. You know, Thrawn Towson, there's a lot of thought that goes into that. Same with Hero Vehicles. So there was a lot of good back and forth, and it was good to get my mind moving again.
That's good, man. Welcome back to Destiny, dude. I was worried for a little bit.
Yeah, no, I'm not going anywhere. I just have some other stuff to take care of.
Like what, dude?
I can't really remember right now. It might be the baby I just bathed before this.
Oh, maybe.
Yeah, that might be it. I'm not positive.
Yeah, I guess. As for our weekly update of our weekly tournament, I actually did not go again this week. Instead, I recorded with Thundershot Games.
And you're part of the problem, Jack. Part of the problem.
Yeah, dude. Yeah, I'm part of the problem, which we're about to talk about in a few minutes. But anybody interested in checking out that episode, definitely gives those guys, words are hard, those guys a listen. And I think they're on YouTube as well as iTunes. So Thundershot Games, I was on their past episode, and Ray is a local from Jersey area, but he's stationed out in Rochester right now. You know, he's from a good state. He's a good guy. It was good talking to him.
Yeah, I haven't had a chance to listen to it, but I downloaded it, and I plan on listening to it tomorrow while I'm at work. So
yeah, it was a good episode. We got to talk about some meta stuff, and he had a fun little segment at the end where it was like, I had 30 seconds. I got like a random deck, and I had 30 seconds to like sell it almost as to why you would win Worlds or why you should play it at Worlds or something. I got Hero Vehicles, and I didn't check my time at all, and I just kept talking and talking, and then like halfway through a sentence, I just had to stop. I was like, well, okay. That's that.
That does sound like a cool segment, though.
But yeah, it was good. And yeah, anybody's interested in something else to listen to should definitely go check that out. But that's really all I've done this week. Other than that, it's just kind of been work. So not an exciting week, really.
Same here for the most part. Work and baby taken care of.
Well, then let's get to the exciting stuff. So for anybody that doesn't know or hasn't seen, it's blown up on Discord and now more recently on Twitter. But FFG, Asmodee, somebody called Pearl Yeti from Artificery and told them basically to stop doing their online tournaments, as they had a regional coming up this weekend, which was an online regional, as they labeled it. And basically I guess it was a cease and desist for just online tournaments. I don't know if that's really considered a cease and desist, because Artificery's like actual online store and stuff is still up, but basically they had to cut their season 5 short, and they had to cut their regional short. So it kind of sucks, but I also kind of get it in a sense, especially because it was labeled a regional, and they were talking about giving away buys and stuff like that, which seemed interesting. And I bet Asmodee or FFG probably got some questions about that and raised some red flags, which it sucks. But I don't know. Do you have any thoughts on it being shut down before we go through the Rally 8 article that Artificery posted?
Yeah, I mean, well, first off, I'd like to just say we'd like to point everybody to read that Rally 8 article and to support Artificery, because they're putting out great content. But, you know, it's such good content that it's sparked an interest in us to have a discussion about it, because it is an interesting dilemma that we're facing now. And my general thoughts are that I feel like I'm not sure the motivation behind FFG's doing this, but I agree in the sense that if they didn't label it a regional and if there wasn't a Worlds buy involved, or whatever buy they were trying to give away, then I'm not sure it would have warranted FFG's attention unless their plans are much greater than what we're giving them credit for. But we can get into that later as well.
Yeah. So anybody curious about the Rally Aid article, of course, you can go to artificery.com/Rally Aid and read it. But basically, he sent out a few tweets, and it's 4 tweets and 3 main points. Basically, Pearl Yeti was like, if you're going to shut us down, whatever. Basically, we're just now, if you're going to shut us down, we're going to put the ball in your guys' court and ask you guys to do better. So the first tweet he sent out, it says, Star Wars Destiny is at a pivotal point in its life. Local metas are faltering, and something needs to be done to save them. The game needs more support from its creators. Here are 3 things the game needs to live and succeed. And then he has hashtag Rally Aid, and then he tagged Asmodee, Fantasy Flight Games, and then Fantasy Flight Organized Play. And then he goes down, and his 3 things are, the second tweet says, a real release schedule calendar with the dates for release and associated organized play events for the next 3 sets. Fix the production and communication issues and earn back the trust of the community. Number 2 is better prize support to help players get into local game stores. $15 prize kits aren't cutting it anymore. Give Destiny the L5R treatment and release a $100 prize kit so Destiny players have a reason to get out and play. And lastly, number 3 is a complete starter product with 30 cards and a 30-point character list that we can turn customers into players with the purchase of a single product and get them into playing us at a local game store immediately. So we could just go through and just give our thoughts on that first part. So I guess even actually, Tommy, before we even dive into it, what do you feel like our local scene, just taking into mind Top Deck and all the Kingsmen, both places we play at? And I know obviously you have been able to be there, but just your thoughts of where Destiny is at right now. Like, do you feel like it's at a good spot? Are we gaining members? Are we losing members? Or is it just like the same, 6 to 10 people that have been playing from the beginning and are still playing?
I have, the caveat here is that I have not been to an event in a handful of weeks. That said, I have been playing since the inception of this game at our local game stores, and I have always felt that our community was either on the rise or at a plateau. I never felt at any point in time like we were in a really desperate place. When a set comes out, there's a lot of hype. That's natural. There's a lot more players making an active effort to get to the store to play. When there's a new kit, same thing. There will be people that will go out of their way to make sure that they can fit that into their schedule to get there. And I feel like there has been people that have left the game, but in our local scene, I feel like those spots have been filled relatively quickly by new blood. A lot of these things that he's saying, I do agree with. I think that they would be great changes. I'm not sure that we're going to see very many of these take place, but I would say that our local community is doing well. What is your thought on that, Jack?
Yeah, I agree that I think we're at a pretty good spot. But I mean, for people like, I haven't been to Wednesdays at all the Kingsmen in a long time, simply because I work Wednesday nights now, so I can't ever go. But Monday nights, if I'm looking at that, we're probably getting anywhere from, like I said, 6 to 10 people. But it's like all the same. Like, I haven't really seen anybody new break into the scene in a while. We've had some new people come to the store, like Drew from Arrowbrook Gaming. I think after the New Jersey event started coming, but that's because he didn't realize like Top Deck was a thing.
I actually told him about Top Deck after playing him, I think in the second or third round I played him.
I'm proud of you, man.
Yeah, bringing players.
But it's just like he's not necessarily somebody buying into the game. It's just him finding out about the store, which is still a good thing, of course, but
sure.
Just a little bit different. But as for new players, like, it's kind of been tough. And I mean, I guess there's like a few different things that go into it, but like, part of it we can get into more with like the how much is that on the local game store itself also as we get into the like prize support stuff. But yeah, I feel like we've just still get a solid amount of people out, but I don't really remember the last time. We've gotten new people out.
Well, I have a friend by the name of Adam. He's from Conshohocken, which is just outside Philadelphia, and he's kind of on the opposite side of the city from where we are. But I know that he's made a trek down, and they have a local store there that's trying to build a scene now. And they've been getting, I think he said 4 to 6 players. I chat with him on Facebook all the time. But he's been trying to get out. So I mean, there's been some new guys. We're at the down of the set. You know, the set has been out for a while now. We're starting to hit the downward slope. We've been in the downward slope probably for a little bit now. So we're going to see, a lack of excitement. Regionals is over. If you're not preparing for Worlds or like maybe a Galactic qualifier, you don't have a whole lot of motivation to play right now. Unless you're brand new to the game and you've got that sparklet and an excitement about it. So I think it's kind of understandable at this point that everybody's not clamoring to get out to the game store to play games in a big, mad dash.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I guess part of me too, should clarify. I feel like we have gotten maybe 1 or 2 new people in the past 2 months. But that's been through friend recruitment rather than anything on the local game store end type thing. Like, it's not like there's been a learn to play demo and we got new people that way. It's more like Shane goes into work and forced it on his friend, who then forced it on his friend, and now we got 2 new players.
Good on you, Shane. Best thing you've ever done.
Same way he got me, man. Forced
Yep.
it on me. But yeah, I feel like, I mean, I get that too. We're at the end of regional, and even like anybody who did regionals too. Yeah. And like you said, if they're not going to Worlds, then they're probably a little burnt out and just want to take a breather. So, and showing up to Monday nights, or a weekly event might not always be the best thing if they already have tokens and the holdout Aldar cards. So it's just like, all right, I got what I need. Now I'm going to take a break.
Yeah. So I think that covers one. Let's tackle each of these issues individually. That's the one. His first tweet was the general premise of the following 3 tweets that he lists, and the first after that, the number one reason to help us save the game, 3 things to save the game, is a real release calendar with the dates released and associated organized play events for the next 3 sets. So he goes on to say, fix the production and communication issues to earn back the trust of the community. So I've been playing FFG games for the better part of a decade, maybe just barely, maybe about 6 years. I've dabbled with X-Wing. I've done Game of Thrones LCG. I've done Star Wars LCG, minimal amount of Imperial Assault and Armada. But terrible transparency and terrible release schedules is kind of FFG's thing. Now, compound that with the fact that these dice are manufactured in China, I believe, and it's apparently a difficult process, and they've been expanding rapidly, and all that growth is going to add more complications to the release of this game. And then in addition to that, you also have Lucasfilms that has to put their seal of approval on everything, and we're having all kinds of issues getting this game out to the players as quick as possible. So it's a tough spot for FFG to be in here. I don't think that we're going to see any real progress in that spot. It sucks for the players. I wish FFG could do a better job at it. I just don't see it happening.
Yeah, I get that too, and I'm still generally newer to FFG, but I have played X-Wing a little bit. I've got just like the core set of Imperial Assault, and I'm now buying into Legion also. And I do get that it's made in China, and the dice component, like, it's hard to compare Destiny to just a card game. Like, it's hard to compare it to Pokemon or Magic, because those are just cards, whereas, like you said, Destiny has that extra component of dice. But part of me, at some point you should get on a schedule, right? Like, I get trying to adapt to a new game,
but
eventually they should
agree. I want this to happen.
Yeah.
I want that. I'm playing both devil's advocate and partially just being a pessimist from being jaded over the past several years of playing FFG games, because that is the single biggest complaint I have about the company as a whole.
Yeah.
So I don't want to be like an apologist for them by any means, because that is one thing that I would hope to see fixed at some point. I'm just not optimistic about it.
Yeah, I think out of all the 3 of these, it's maybe what I want fixed the most, but maybe that's because I'm just a competitive player and probably what affects me the the most out of all of them. But it is just frustrating to go between like, I mean, in reality, Legacies dropped like mid-January, right? It officially dropped the first week of February or whatever, but it basically dropped early January, and now we're talking quarter 3 for Way of the Force. So it's just like there's this long gap, and like you said, like the reason people aren't going to local game stores is because they have nothing to prepare for. But having a new set could help mitigate that
Oh,
in a
absolutely.
sense where people get excited and come out. And also, like part of me is just disappointed. Like I love store championship season. That was like my first competitive season of anything, any card game ever, and it was a lot of fun. I got to go to like 3 of them. They were a total blast. But now the idea that the first part of store championships is going to be this like this same meta just doesn't really excite me.
Yeah, it's disappointing. It it needs to improve. I'd love to see this improve. I'm not sure it's going to. I love the game enough where I'm going to play either way. Is it going to hurt the overall community? Yes, it definitely is. You want to move on to number 3?
Yeah, my last, I guess, note on this one too is that I've seen like a lot of people on Discord just saying like, they pointed out the same thing that you pointed out, like that FFG is bad and has been bad, and that's noted. But some people are just like putting down other people who even want to hold FFG accountable or even try for that. And I just got like, if you think FFG should be doing better in this, regardless of their track record, you should still push for it. Like to me, it just doesn't make sense in anything, in any part of the world, when you buy something and you're a customer, if you don't like the way something happened or went down, like voice your opinion. If you go to a restaurant and it takes an hour to get you a burger, you should probably complain.
Yeah, no, you're right. It never hurts to let your voice be heard. It doesn't. And like I said, I'm going to fall in line and I'm going to continue to play this game either way because I do love it. Even though I don't agree with all the routes that the company takes and all their methods, but I agree. Letting our voice be heard is the only way to advocate change.
All right. Number 2, some better prize support.
I have some feelings about the prize support personally. I'm not sure that better prize support for local kits, like $100 kit, is the best way to grow the game. I think if you have $100 kit and you run one massive event with it, you're going to draw players from a larger pool, like a larger area. So we're just outside Philadelphia. Let's say hypothetically we run one of these events. I think we end up with 30, 40 players at this event, similar to a store championship or a small regional. And none of these people are going to be new players. This isn't a way to get new players into the game. Prize support doesn't always attract new players unless you're giving it to everybody. When you have an event where you have extremely exclusive prize support, you're attracting the competitive players, the top level players, and that can actually have an adverse effect on bringing new players in. Because what new player would want to spend $25 on an event when they know they're going to get stomped for 6 straight rounds because everybody's bringing chalk? They're just bringing all the best decks. I don't think that actually grows the game. I would love to see $100 prize kits because I would love to go compete for that, and that gets my juices flowing. But I don't necessarily think that's a great avenue to bring new players into the game unless you're distributing those prizes, at a wider level, lower on the scale.
Do you know exactly in terms of the L5R what the $100 kit is or does? Because I don't.
I don't know. I don't off the top of my head. So in all fairness, that could be the situation. I'm saying that if we were to have $100 kit, I would rather it see, obviously there's going to be a draw for the competitive player, but I think that keeping in mind you need, strong participation prizes or even like achievement-based prizing, however that may be easier in L5R because I know there's a clan thing and you can, be best in clan or the top clan can get things. So you can, kind of have a team up cumulative experience in addition to your individual performance.
Yeah, so I mean that could be interesting. So anybody that does actually know if that's something, if anybody plays L5R and knows if that's affected their local scene, that'd be interesting to reach out and let us know about that.
I think Joe played L5R for like 72 hours.
Yeah, I think so. I remember a few people, all the King's Men like bought into it, and then I've never
And
heard
then
of
he
any of them
went to the
playing it
Galactic
again.
Qualifier and had a ticket, and I think he like sold it the day before and bought a Destiny ticket once he saw those sweet spot glosses.
I mean, I don't really blame
Yeah, I don't blame him at all.
him. Yeah. As for me, and this is another thing too, it's like you just got to know FFG. FFG for like every game they do, it's like tokens or some type of alternate art card. You know, whether that's X-Wing, and it's looking like that for Legion 2 coming up. And I think that's something you just kind of have to expect. Like, as for prize support at a weekly event, I actually think it's more on your local game store than it is on FFG to provide prize support for people attending weekly. But maybe that's just me. Like, Top Deck, I think, is like fantastic with it. Like, they are very generous with their prize support. So it's easy for me to be like, yeah, I want to make a point to go there every week because I know if I do well, I'm going to walk away with good store credit. Like, I came in second the other week and walked away with like $20 in store credit. So why wouldn't I want to keep doing that and going out to that? Whereas I've heard, like, I mean, you can only help so much of what your local game store does, but where people will put $5 in and the only prize support is the $15 prize kit, which is, you know, if you get 3 people, then the store's breaking even. So for them not to offer more doesn't make sense. So I think that really comes down to how willing your local game store is to kind of put out stuff. And that's something that don't just get on FFG about, start getting on your local game stores about.
Yeah, it's not. I agree. I understand a store wanting to recoup the money for the $15 prize kit. I do understand that. So I understand them collecting, but it would be nice to see a little additional prize support. I don't want to put the onus on the game store either. I think that we as the community, it's our job to make sure that we are sweetening the pot. And when we have a surplus of rares or legendaries or, you know, promos and mats and things that we're, instead of, you know, hawking things on eBay and driving up prices, sometimes it's nice to give your third store championship mat back to the community, even if it's just in a raffle or, you know, whatever it may be. I think that that's a good way to go about things as well.
Yeah, I mean, that's one of the things that was huge about the Artificery tournament too, is it's not like they actually got a regional kit or store championship kit like when they did that way back when. Basically, you know, Taxter and Agent Zion like all donated their spare mats and stuff like that to the prize support. Some of them got some extra spot gloss and they donated that to prize support. So that's something too that you should keep in mind. Like, if you, like you said, if you have extra stuff, like, I get if you travel a lot and you want to recoup some of your money to make your travel expenses lighter, to basically let you do that stuff. But if you're not in that, you know, between a rock and a hard place with money and you can actually give back to your community, I think that'd be a really cool.
No, absolutely.
Really cool thing to do.
I sold a spot gloss Boba Fett from a Galactic Qualifier, so I'm not, you know, putting anyone down that's doing that. I'm saying if you're fortunate enough to go out and make top 4 at 4 store championships and you have all these Phasma mats stacked up at your house and they're not, you know, if the trouble of selling that on eBay at this point with as many that are out there isn't worth like what you could actually get back by giving that to the community and growing it, and people being like, oh, that's really cool, new players would want that, they weren't playing at that time, or somebody's just wasn't as good at that time and since then has become better, and it's just a good way to, you know, encourage your community and your other players. That's just an example though.
Agreed. All right, any other thoughts on that before we move on to the number 3?
No.
Cool. All right, so number 3 is the complete starter product with 30 cards and a 30-point character list. I like this idea. At that point, it would probably end up costing $30. So, I mean, you could theoretically just buy 2 Bobas or 2 Lukes and it'd be the same. So it's like, I get, like, it probably sounds better to say to somebody, hey, buy this one $30 product than it is to say, hey, buy this thing twice and then you'll be good. So there's part of that sounding better. And some people might be hesitant to, like, with a 30-point, like, if FFG was like, hey, we're coming out with another 30-point 2-player set, people would be nervous. The same thing would happen with Phasma, where there's the 1-point increase. But, I mean, that could just be a lesson learned. And next time they make a 2-player set like that, have the characters add up to 27 or 28. That way you can put a plot in there, get that element of the game going. And also, if you realize one of them needs to be put on Balance of the Force, you know, that option's still there and it wouldn't mess up starter set necessarily. But again, I don't know if it just sounds good, but part of me just said I still think two Boba or two Lukes would do the job fine.
Yeah, I think the thing about the two Bobas or the two Lukes is then the onus is on the player to then combine those two decks to make one deck, and that can be somewhat confusing in a way, I guess. So maybe the meet in the middle option would be to include a list, like a preset 30 card list that would say, hey, if you have two of these starters, this is what we recommend you play your, at an event with a great starter deck for an event. I think that a 30 card all inclusive box set with 30 points of characters and or plots that is ready to play off the shelf is a great idea. It's not something that I think is in or has been in FFG's model in the past, and I don't foresee them changing their ways in the future. I think they like putting one heirloom lightsaber in, the Luke deck, forcing you to buy two. And I just don't, and I know you could go up to 30 cards in one of those and make it a real deck, but, and still have the one heirloom in it and still the incentive to buy the second. That's just not the way they have been marketing or producing products over the past several years. It's just not. And I don't think that they're going to do that. I'm also not sure that this hits as broad an amount of people as you might think. I don't know if it's a big deal that you have to buy two starter decks as opposed to one, even though it would be, probably the same price either way. So it might appeal to more people than I'm giving it credit, though.
Yeah, part of me still thinks the best way for new players would be a draft type situation. But I mean, a lot of people I feel like might think draft isn't in a good spot right now, which I kind of get, because at this point we're 4 months into a set. Obviously people don't really want to draft anymore after it's been into a set that long. So I like the idea of a 30 card, 30 point character list. Somebody could just crack open, be a half decent list, and they're ready to roll. But like you said, it's another thing that seems like FFG probably won't do. I mean, I had to buy 2 core sets for Legion for myself to make a 800 point list. So
yeah, I mean, for me, this isn't at the top of my list for things that I think would be great for the game. I would actually rank them for the way that I would like to see them change. I would rank them in the order that they were presented, with a better release schedule as my number one priority. Prize support is number 2, although I think the Galactic Qualifiers prize support has been a massive step in the right direction. And then number 3 would be the starter deck thing. But I have one thing I'd like to say about the squashing of the online Artificery tournaments, and it's terrible. I haven't participated in them because I've only recently obtained TTS and my time has been limited. But I do want to say that I think it sucks, and I think that the online community was the closest thing you'll ever see to the actual Worlds event, because you can draw talented players from all over the world, and it brings them all to a neutral field and allows them to compete. I realize that FFG is saying that this isn't actually the game of destiny, in quotes, therefore you shouldn't be able to obtain a buy. I think that that's their stance on it. I'm worried that they might squash TTS entirely. I hope that's not the case. I know that there's some rumblings about that, but I would like to direct some attention to the Fantasy Flight Interactive page. And that's a new thing that they're doing. They have a different studio. It's in Wisconsin, and they've just announced, I believe in December, they announced that they were going to adapt Lord of the Rings, the living card game, for a digital version that I believe can be played on a tablet. And if you look at some of the pictures, it looks very similar to Hearthstone with the card art. And if we got a more streamlined, tablet type version of TTS or Star Wars Destiny, I think that would be a good thing. I'd like to see them build in some ways to earn points in game and build your collection. I don't think that they're going to give you the situation where you can just have everything. I think that it's going to be more of an incentive-based system that you can circumvent by spending real dollars, which sucks. But hopefully we see progress on that front if they move in to abolish the mod for Tabletop Simulator.
Yeah, apparently And again, I don't know all the facts, so take this with a grain of salt. But apparently, this happened before with the Imperial Salt.
You mean the digital version? There's an integration with Imperial Assault where you can have the game master not be a player, and it can actually run off of a tablet.
Yes, but I think I meant the way of TTS. So I know that's
okay.
out now. But as for like the game itself, like there's a mod on TTS for X-Wing and Imperial Assault and Legion now too, and all of them are doing tournaments. Now, I don't think any of them were as big or labeled as a regional as we talked about. That could have been, the flying too close to the sun type thing for Destiny. But I believe Imperial Assault got like taken down, but then they just put it back up, and TTS tried taking it down again. Because basically, if FFG or Asmodee wants to take a mod off, they have to contact the company that made TTS, and they have to take it down. And then if a bunch of people just keep uploading it, or if they already have it, like it becomes like a whole mess, and eventually they gave up on it, from what I understand.
Yeah, I don't. It's going to be more trouble to police it than it is worth. So I think that the only way they can truly eliminate it, aside from disincentivizing it by eliminating tournament play, is really to produce a better alternative, which may be in the works. I don't see that happening anytime soon. I feel like we would have gotten an announcement and then have to wait 6 months anyway. So yeah. I don't think that's on the horizon at all. But maybe in the distant future. That's
kind of my issue with it too, is that it's like now there's just this giant void of like, for a lot of people. Like for me, I'll still kind of get on with my Destiny life because I have a good local game store. But some of these people, like, this regional was it. The season tournament is it. Like, those two things are the only competitive play they get to see, because most people in their area have sold out or never even started to begin with. And honestly, a lot of people said, like, during the Awakenings meta and into Spirit of Rebellion, like, they would have stopped playing if it wasn't for TTS, simply because there was, like, even though they wanted to buy cards, there were no cards for them to buy. So it's like, it's weird. I think if they ever got an online thing, like, they could do a lot of cool creative stuff with it. And I hope that we could get there eventually. But right now, from what I understand, and even Pearl Yeti in the Discord said, it's more of a Disney thing rather than an FFG Asmodee thing.
I hope that's the case, because I don't think Disney is going to pursue TTS as a whole. It sucks about the tournaments. It really sucks about the tournaments. I'm disappointed because I considered signing up for the regional as well due to my personal life circumstances and not being able to make it out to the game store. It sucks. It just sucks. There's no other way to describe it, really.
It sucks, but yeah, we'll see where it goes. If they come out with an online thing, I think that could be really cool. Like I said.
I don't know what Shane was thinking, but I'm blaming him for all this.
Honestly, it was probably him.
Yeah, it was. I think Shane's the reason. They heard he downloaded it.
Yeah, if you have any complaints about Shane, just send him his way.
Mm-hmm.
Once he started to get into it, just saying.
He ruins everything.
Just saying. All right, so are there any other thoughts that you have about this hashtag Ralliade Artificery shutting down type thing?
No, I don't think so. It's a big bummer, It's a huge bummer. I'd like to see some spoilers come our way. That way we can have something fun to talk about.
I think they have to
you can have some good PR after that.
Even if you wait till Worlds, like, that's still like there. And I have to say, there's so much talk, like, and I don't know like what this talk exactly means, but like, you're seeing people from Artificery, and I'm seeing people from Hyperloops just talk about like other card games. Like, they're getting so much back into Hearthstone, and there's some other game they've been talking about that I don't know what it is. I think it's by Steam or something. But it's like and these are like the faces of the game too. Like, it's Pearl Yeti's talking about it, Agent of Zion's talking about it, Bobby Sapphire, Honestly Sarcastic, like, they're frustrated to the point where they're now trying to find time for another card game when Worlds is in a week and a half. You know what I mean? Like, if the faces of the game are doing this, you have to provide something. And that I'd even say if they wait till Worlds, that could be like too long. Like, there could be some good damage done by then at that point. So I hope they come out with something within the next week. But I don't think the roof is falling. I don't think this game is necessarily at its end. I just think we're at a potential, like, a critical point. And like Tommy said, I'm going to play this game till it dies because I absolutely love it. But I definitely see why it could be in an awkward type spot.
Yeah, I mean the community is only going to tolerate so much, and when I say the community, I don't mean every single person in the community, but you cannot, you know, create a bad relationship with that kind of number of people and not expect a backlash. So I would, and they're not stupid. I hope that we would see some announcement that is a positive announcement within the next week. And I think that if we don't, then that's a bad sign. I mean, I don't think it's the end of the world, like you said, but I think that they drop the ball if they don't at least put up a preview article.
Yep, agreed. Or just send us spoilers. That's fine too. Whatever you gotta do, FG. All right, cool. So we can move on from that. If you guys are interested, you could check out Artificery's website. You can talk to them, as they're a bit more knowledgeable of the information than Tommy and I ever will be, because they are the ones in the situation and we are just spectators. But that is that. So we're going to get into our, as Tommy named it, our world hype.
World hype?
World hype is going to be lit.
It's lit.
And we really just have one group left, and that's the Blue Hero. And that falls into the Rey Ayla, the Ayla Padawan, and also the Qui-Gon Yoda decks.
I thought we were breaking down Tarkin's Seventh Sister tonight. We're not?
You wrote a whole article about that, dude.
Oh, I did. That's dated now. That's a dated list.
That's true. We'll bring Joe on here and talk about Tarkin's Seventh Sister.
That's a good idea, yeah. Joe will divulge all his secrets.
But what was I even going to say?
Blue Hero. I apologize.
Blue Hero.
Playing the role of Shane tonight will be Tom.
Hey, I'm actually willing to bet too that nobody's going to play Tarkin 7th at Worlds unless that person is Joe.
Yeah, Joe is probably the only person that might. I would if I was going. I love it.
But you're not.
I'm not.
You're disappointing in the entire
I honestly didn't even try to get a ticket, and if I had won a regional, I still probably wouldn't go.
Yeah, I figured that. Shane, dude, he's got plenty of time. Why didn't he go?
I don't know. Priorities, right, man. He's all mixed up.
Enough about Shane. He's not worth it. We'll get into Rey Ayla.
Let's get World's hype.
So Rey Ayla didn't start to pop up until the Connecticut Regional, when Bobby Sapphire dropped that bomb on the world and came in second place. Well, he officially scooped, but I think he lost, playing against Nick on TTS or something later. But Hero Vehicles is actually a bad matchup for it. But basically what this deck tries to do is it tries to push out as many dice as it can in a very quick fashion, with 15 on Rey and 12 on Ayla. And then it lets you start with 3 resources with profitable connections. And going from there, it binds all things and reaping the crystal, so it can just turn out powerful dice very quickly. So this thing can actually be a real pain. And one of the best things it does is that it has some really good potential mitigation, especially if this deck is ahead. If it's ahead, this deck has good mitigation. If it's behind, Blue Hero struggles because a lot of its dice need to be in the pool for it to do well, like Force Misdirection and Guard. But I think it's just in a good spot because it could do close quarters assault with, while rolling out 5 to 6 dice that have 50% damage sides on melee, and then just wipe your entire hand. So this deck can just ramp fast, ramp hard, and of course, one of the scariest things in the game is Rey with an Ancient and double Shoto on her, because then she's just getting 2 shields every time and doing a damage to you every time she activates. So it's just a super tanky, super powerful deck. And it's good, man. I think Boba 7th is going to be the most played, but I think this will be close behind it.
I think it's a really solid deck, but I think that we're downplaying the fact that Mike Gem basically called the meta perfectly. He absolutely nailed the meta. I think that he knew that this deck was going to dominate because it had the removal package and the speed to stay out in front of the decks that were going to be there, mainly the OTK and the Boba 7th. He knew that he was going to brutalize people with Force Misdirection. He knew that it was going to dominate the Swiss, and he did great, and he is a phenomenal player. But I think that him calling that meta was perfect. I am not convinced that the World's meta will be a great meta for this deck. I feel like there are going to be like you said, yes, there was going to be plenty of Boba Seventh, but I'm not convinced that Boba Seventh is going to be um, the top deck. I think that we are going to see a lot of the best players probably playing hero vehicles, which is then going to mean that a lot of players are going to be playing hero mill. I'm not so sure that Rey Ayla matches up very well against hero vehicles, and I don't know what the matchup is like against mill at all, but I know that vehicles can be a little questionable for it, and I think that we're going to see a lot of vehicles there. That's my hunch. That's just my hunch.
Yeah, and I get that too. But I mean, to give credit to some players, I think this won another, like it won another regional, so it has popped up
Oh,
aside
for sure.
from.
For sure. But a lot of players see what he can do and wanted to take that and replicate it. And it's not like Boba Seventh went anywhere. So you're able to beat
Yeah,
it counters a very prominent deck well. It's not like, you automatically beat it, but your removal is better against that deck than most decks out there. So I think that is a favorable matchup for you as long as you can stay out in front and put a premium on that claiming of the battlefield so that you can get your dice in the pool ahead of them. So I think it does match up well there.
and I think it matches up well against Yoda Hondo too, which is a deck I think you'll be seeing in Force at Worlds also.
I do too. For me, the one thing that stands out about this deck and a lot of the meta decks that we've talked about is shields. I think that this deck obviously is going to be generating shields. You want to do that with Rey just so you can get the bonus damage every turn. We said Yoda Hondo, you just mentioned. Anything with Yoda is going to generate shields. Hero Mill is going to generate shields. Hero Vehicles is going to generate plenty of shields. I think that if you're running a deck, you better have some cards that
Yeah.
remove shields, bypass shields, whether it's Ewok Battlefield, it's Intimidate, it's Light Bow, it's Vibro Knife, whatever it is, you better have an answer for shields in your deck.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. But yeah, I mean, if you're playing against this deck, I think just the big thing you got to watch out for is force misdirection. That's probably that and close quarters assault could potentially be the two big blowout plays.
Yeah.
But sometimes close quarters assault, you just stare at the face and you're like, there's nothing I could do about all that dice. So I might as well play this card from hand or discard to reroll so I can actually do that. So it can suck sometimes.
Absolutely. It's nothing you can do, and it is a blowout, but you just got to take your licks sometimes.
Yeah. And some of these decks, I don't know if Mike ran it in the beginning, and I've seen some variations of what people are putting in, whether it's Decisive Blow or Mind Trick. Both of those are cards that you could potentially see in this deck. I would probably favor Mind Trick more because I think that's a super good card, but that's something you might just want to play around if you're playing against this deck. If they're sitting on two resources, because then, you don't want to lose half your dice. If you have two characters, roll in one, resolve what you can get, and then roll in another one, resolve what you get. So that way you're not removing 3 or 4 dice. You're only going to remove 1 or 2.
Yeah. Yeah, I think you're right. I know it's sometimes it's difficult if you have modified sides, you're trying to pair something, but I agree you have to take what you get. I think there's a lot of decks that need to follow that strategy, and I know it depends greatly on your matchup, like in this case where you have to expect your opponent to have their blowout. In this case it's 4 cards in their deck, so there's a good chance that they have it. Whether or not they're in a situation where they can utilizing it, meaning they have to have the melee damage showing, is you can be aggressive when that happens if they don't have the melee showing, but you do have to be aware at all times. Just like we said with the Boba Seventh, we were talking about, oh my gosh, the name of the card that you hate, the one card you hate in all of Destiny.
Bait and switch?
Bait and switch. Just like that. You need to be aware of force misdirection. Force direction will single-handedly win games for this deck.
Yeah, and you can often tell when your opponent has it too. I mean, there's some plays where if they roll out first and you roll out next, there's nothing you can do about it. But if you see them like resolve all their melee and leave 1 dice out, then oftentimes they probably have force misdirection.
Oh my god, that's telegraphing it hard.
Or if they're just waiting to resolve their damage, that's because oftentimes, the thing is, if you're showing damage, you want to resolve it, but sometimes they might leave it out for another action or two just to bait you into pitching a reroll and getting some damage sides and stuff like that. So,
yep. And the other thing to do in playing against this deck is to, maybe leave some dice out there. Maybe you have to leave a little bit of damage out there. Maybe you got to leave that resource out there. Maybe you got to claim a little earlier. I think that that's another way to try to get out in front.
Yeah, because if they can't get their force misdirections and if they can't get their guards off, they're going to be in a tough spot.
Absolutely.
Cool. So any other thoughts on Ray, Ayla?
One other thing is I think that if your opponent has a Shoto on Ray and maybe you're playing hero vehicles or something, I think it's kind of a good idea that maybe vandalize it.
Yeah.
I'm thinking that might be a good move. It's not something I've ever done, but it's something that just popped in my head. So, weigh out that option.
Because that's something too, especially on a character like Ray, where she gets a damage from it. It might be worth it.
A damage and a shield. I mean, the Shoto is always going to provide a shield. It's always going to provide that die, which is a good die. But in Ray's situation, it's just at that point where, you know what, you're better off just discarding that.
Yeah.
Preferably before she activates.
Yeah. But that can be the tough part.
That is the tough part.
Cool. Yeah. So this is a deck. Personally, I love seeing Blue Hero do well. And I like this deck, and I played with it a little bit, but sometimes I felt like I was at the mercy of my draws. Like I've had games where I got one upgrade for the first 2 rounds, and then I drew all my upgrades the 3rd round, and it was just at that point I was already behind and not doing well. So it's definitely good, and obviously somebody like Mike can pilot it to its top level. But like you said, it'll be interesting to see how well this would fit in at Worlds, but because people are going to show up with it. I know they will.
Oh, without a doubt, it will be there. I don't think it's going to be the most represented deck. I think it's going to be a popular deck, though.
Agreed. So a deck that is similar to it is Eric Wainwright himself.
Is that his title himself that we have to say after? I feel like I've heard that on multiple podcasts.
Well, I don't know if I really have no idea if I started or not, but for the pie charts, when I had to put in Ayla Padawan, I just put Eric Wainwright himself. And
all right, you taking credit for it? We'll go with that.
No, I'm not. I'm just saying it was. No, not what I'm saying. I'm just saying it could help spread that way.
I'm reading between the lines. I see what you're saying.
Basically, everything you've ever seen in Destiny, I've come up with.
That's good. You got to put that caveat.
Ray, Ayla, I came up with that. Gave it to Bobby.
Everything but bait and switch.
Yeah, I didn't come up with that. Hero vehicles, I came up with it. Gave it to Taxter. You're welcome. Yeah. Everything.
So go ahead. Eric Wainwright himself.
Tommy, everything.
I got you.
For Ayla Padawan, they're taking a similar approach of vomiting out dice. With the Padawan's ability, generally they're going to try to play 2 upgrades that first turn, whether that's through reaping the crystal for a big one and just paying 2 for that, or 1 for that and trying to grab another resource and paying something real cheap. So it's if they could get 2 ancients out on a Padawan and a Padawan, they're in a pretty good spot, and they're already starting off with 6 dice out first turn, which is a very real thing to do. And he also has those cheap supports in BB-8 and R2-D2. Now, some other people might cut BB-8, so it might just be R2-D2. But this deck will have the same things like we talked about with the force misdirections and the guard, but they're also having a few other trickier things like the power of the force or Stronger You Have Become, which I know you like. Stronger Have Become. You have become.
Yeah, I think it's a great card in the right deck, and this would be the right deck for that. Same thing with Power of the Force.
It's interesting, and the deck will probably potentially run the 4 Annexes deck, which is basically everybody has Guardian. And I don't have much experience, and obviously if I played Eric Wainwright, it would be a different story, but part of me is still amazed that this does so well and beats decks like an OTK. But part of me is just a Padawan 7 health, that's so low. I feel like if you could just blow one of them off turn 1 or first action or second action turn 2, you're in a pretty good spot.
Yeah, this deck really is leveraging economy, and you covered the fact that it wants to pump out upgrades at a pace that is unmatchable by most decks. But the other part of the economy that you didn't mention is the hand economy. I know I've heard from Eric Wainwright himself in multiple interviews about how he loves cards that will allow him to draw an additional card specifically on his first turn so that he can have that extra upgrade or that extra reroll or extra BB-8 that he can play at the end of the turn and get that die into the pool and get that one extra resolution off of that die, because resolving more dice in your first turn is the best way to go, because the sooner you have those dice on the table, the more times you're going to get to resolve those dice, which means the more value you're going to get out of those dice in that game. The deck is built on the concept of economy, and it flourishes there. Yes, you look at it and you see 7 health Padawan, but it's a 3-wide deck, and you're going to be playing Heirloom Lightsaber, which is an amazing card, and it is going to redeploy, and then people are going to get burned when they drop that Ray Saber on something for cheap, and they get shields, or 1 shield rather. And, Blue has plenty of ways to stay alive. Blue Hero specifically, with the removal we talked about, you're going to have the cautions, you're going to have the Force Illusions. You'll find yourself having a harder time to killing a 7 health Padawan than you'd like. And also, there'll be situations where you don't want to kill that Padawan because you don't feel like dealing with that Heirloom Lightsaber being rolled in again. So it puts you in difficult positions. It's a stronger deck than people realize, and Eric Wainwright himself appears to be a master with it.
Oh, definitely. I mean, he's been playing it for over a year at this point.
Yeah, I think he's the only guy with 2 regional wins that played the same deck. Maybe just 2 regional wins, period.
Does Agent Zion and Taxer have 2? I don't know.
I don't recall.
No idea, but he definitely has 2 with this deck.
Eric definitely has 2 himself, all by himself.
Which is crazy to think about, because again, it's like one of those decks you sit down across from and you just don't think anything of it until you play against somebody who pilots it as well as he does. And I think people will try to reciprocate this. I don't think it'll be that represented, but I think there's a good chance you could run into this deck. And, I have no idea if Eric is going to run this or not, but I think there'll definitely be people trying to copy it or have tried to copy it before, as I've seen it pop up in regionals in other areas that I know he was not there.
Yeah, I would not be surprised if he played it. I would think that he should play it for the simple fact that I don't think people have it on their gauntlet and are repping against it. So that is another advantage to him, not to mention that he knows how to play that deck, better than any deck, probably because he's been playing it for so many consecutive metas. And I think that the power level for decks right now, the top decks right now, seem to be so close that the more important thing than playing maybe the best deck that's slightly better than the other decks is anticipating the meta and having a comfort level with your deck and knowing your deck in all the matchups. And I think that is definitely advantage him. As far as the meta goes, I don't know how it matches up entirely, but his comfort level is there for sure. And he has a slight advantage because other people won't have seen that look often.
Yeah. Cool. Any other thoughts about this before we move on to Qui-Gon Yoda?
No, other than I love this deck, and Eric Wainwright seems like a swell guy. But he might not bring it because those Tulsa guys like to cook up special stuff, special brews for things right before tournaments too.
That's true. All right, so we are moving on to Qui-Gon Yoda, and this deck popped up more recently in the Canadian stuff. I believe it won a Canadian regional and won nationals. I think it won both, but don't quote me. And it also went and won one day. It went 6-0 at PAX East one of the days. I don't remember which day exactly. I think it was the Friday PAX East at the Galactic Qualifier. So it's definitely popped up more, and it's, as you mentioned, just one of those shield decks. It's probably got caution. It's got Yoda's dice. Probably has heightened awareness. So it's like all these things that probably have Shoto's, and then Qui-Gon's dice, of course, have 2 shield sides. So it's really just like one of those super tanky, super hard to get through, and it'll just wear you down as the game goes on and probably hit you with a big play at the end. All lists that I've seen still have Ataru Strike in it. So whether it's an Ataru Strike and a heightened awareness, or heightened awareness into Ataru Strike, or a heightened awareness into a riposte for the kill, it definitely has some tricks up its sleeve, but it's not even running that much up or that many upgrades. Like, I've seen illusions, I've seen force speeds, I've seen ancients, and then Obi-Wans and Shotos, and then maybe heirlooms. So it's got an interesting layout, and again, I think it's just going for that tanky kind of cut you to death build.
Yeah, I would think. I really don't want to sound redundant. Maybe it's just Blue Hero in general, but I would think that hero vehicles would be a difficult deck for it to face because it's 3 characters. I don't feel like this deck is going to be bursting anybody down, but it's looking to grind you out and survive. Hero vehicles, arguably, you could say, has an equal amount of survivability, or at least similar amount of survivability, except for hero vehicles endgame seems much more potent than this deck's, in my opinion. So that would be, I have limited experience against this. I know Chris from Top Deck TCG played this for a little while, and I played against him with my Tarkin 7th deck, preparing for the New Jersey Regional, and we had some, I know of one really close game in the finals one week, and it's a strong deck, and it's a lot to cut through. Shields are annoying when you're using indirect damage, too. But I don't know, outside of that, what the other matchups would be. That's one that pops into my mind, for on paper maybe being advantage hero vehicles again.
Yeah, I actually only have one game against this, and this was the first round of Connecticut. And man, that game was close. I was running Sabine Ezra, and I swear the first like 2 rounds, I did not hit any damage. So that made Yoda's dice do damage. And then he had Riposte and like all of Qui-Gon's shield dice. Basically, Qui-Gon's abilities were on completely for the first 2 rounds. And trust me, that damage adds up.
Yeah,
I basically just
sure.
had to stay alive with second chances and impersonate. And basically it came down to like the last round. It was like super awkward where I had some damage to just barely kill him. But then I looked at my hand. I knew I had Never Tell Me the Odds. And so I knew if I went first, took a Hidden Blaster out, and then Never Tell Me the Odds for 12, I could kill Yoda. It was just like this weird thing, but it's crazy because normally people say Yoda doesn't have damage sides, which he doesn't. But if it goes right for Qui-Gon, Yoda has a damage side on him, which he can chain and do a lot of things with. So
yeah,
it definitely deserves some reps against. And it's always, of course, stuff that pops up late in the meta like this, and then the blue-red mill. You really don't know how good it is, but it popped up towards the end, so you know it has some stay in the meta. So I definitely would throw a few games against this.
Yeah, it helps to get some games in. People haven't been seeing Qui-Gon. People understand how Yoda works at this point. But this deck is going to ramp, and they may be able to hit you with certain events that you're not prepared for because they have a surplus of resources due to Yoda. Because I doubt they're milling you. They're probably taking a shield, maybe turning a die, taking another shield, taking a resource. So they're going to stack some resources up. So they're going to hit you with some fancy removal at times.
Yeah, and it's interesting. Like, I still think you go for Qui-Gon first because I feel like the deck kind of collapses after that.
Yeah, I'd agree. You need a loaded up Yoda to close the game out if they take out your Qui-Gon for sure. And you better have killed a character or 2 if they take out your Qui-Gon.
Yeah, exactly. And it's like all the upgrades that they're even running too, like Ancients and Shotos don't really match up well with Yoda. Of course, you can fix them, but then they're open to mitigation. But they really only have the Obi-Wan's lightsaber on Yoda that can consistently special chain and do damage, which is still that's still potential. If you special chain all the way through, you could do 3 unblockable, and now that's all you're doing. But that could potentially close out games late on and gives you 3 shields in the process. But I mean, the whole thing, is Qui-Gon's shield pinging. So if you're doing damage to him and keeping him off shields, I think you'll be in a pretty good spot.
I agree.
All right. Any other thoughts on our last bit of Worlds Lit?
No, this been hyped though, yo.
It's been hyped though, yo.
For Rizzle. King Kong ain't got.
Don't even finish it.
All right, I will.
So last week we had Jedi Geek Girl on from iRebel. We all 3 of us, Shane was on last week.
Oh man, she roasted Shane so bad. I loved it. It was great. It was
great. Dude, like, didn't stop.
I know.
I think Shane's still crying.
Yeah, he is. My mom called me and was like, "What's wrong with your brother?" I was like, "Oh, he got wrecked."
And then she was like, "Get him out of my basement." And I'm like, no.
Nah. He couldn't pay me enough rent to live here.
Well, you want your kid to grow up normal.
Yeah, for sure.
But what I was getting at before we got on our Shane tangent was we talked about what do you think your winning deck at Worlds is going to be? What do you think like your most played deck? And you kind of touched on it a little bit, but just to get it set in stone, what do you think is going to be the winning deck at Worlds? And it's tough to predict, of course. I know it's an open meta, but I'm going to make you commit to one deck right now.
All right, you're going to make me commit to one deck. That's tough. I don't think I want to commit to one deck right now. I think, oh man, Jack, this is tough, dude. Springing this on me. I think that hero vehicles are going to be out in full force, and I think some of the better players are going to be playing it, which means that other players are going to anticipate that, and they're going to try mill or other decks that will counter it. Eric Wainwright would be the wild card. And we got to remember that there are players that are not content creators that are fabulous. So even though they may not have prominent names, they are fabulous. Eric Wainwright being an example. Oh man, I don't know. I don't think Boba 7th is necessarily going to be at the end of the event in force. I think one or two may make it to a top cut, but I think it's going to be a large percentage of the field, but I think people are going to be prepared for it and know how to play against it. Oh, Jack.
Do it.
I don't know. I think the winning deck is going to run Force Wave. How's that?
Too broad.
That's pretty outlandish. Come on.
Well, I said hero vehicles, right? At least I committed to something.
You did commit. I'll commit to Tarkin 7th. There you go.
So you think Joe's going to win World?
Go Joe. Now you know. G.I. Joe.
What do you think is going to be the most played deck across the Swiss rounds and everything?
I think Boba 7th will be the most played deck.
Agreed.
Followed closely by hero vehicles.
Yeah, I could probably get behind that. Maybe.
That's just my opinion.
Yeah. I don't know. Part of me just hero vehicles is a good deck, and I know that there's been some top players playing that deck specifically, so that's part of why I think hero vehicles is going to do so well. But we'll see. We will see. All right, cool. So that does it for basically our show, man. Any final thoughts before we get into closings?
No, just I can smell Shane from here, and I live miles from him.
I'm sorry to hear that, dude. All right, so anybody looking for more content, we are on Facebook, we're on Twitter, we're on YouTube, and we are starting to really ramp up our WordPress, our blog, and basically we're trying to turn out articles. So we've got 3 or 4 out there already. The most recent one is a what to look out for at Worlds. So it basically goes through some decks and some of the more surprise factor cards that you might not expect, unless of course you did extensive testing, then you would know. But cards like Determination and Emergency Evacuation, most people really aren't familiar with. So it's just a few cards to make sure you're testing against and getting ready for. And also, like I've said, this meta is going to reach into store championships a little bit. So this is also good information if you're looking to go to some store championships. I know the dates aren't out yet, but just something to keep in mind. Of course, thank you to all our patrons. It is, again, humbling that you guys are donating to us and helping us keep costs down of all those things. So that's definitely a big thank you to these guys, those guys and gals. Anybody that is looking, I mentioned last week, our alt arts are sent to the printer. Actually, I don't know if I mentioned it last week. I don't know if they were sent in just yet.
I don't think they were. So they are at the printer. They look awesome. Jack, you've done a great job. Shane got us to hook up with an artist, a local guy. They look great, better than I anticipated.
You hear that? You hear that, Shane? Tommy doubted you.
I did. I doubted him. I mean, look at his track record.
That is true. So those are out there. I think I even said it on Sunday. I don't know if I posted the picture, but again, I'll double check that first for you guys to be sent out. But if you go to our Patreon page, it is on there for you to check out. I know it's definitely 100% up there, but I'll be posting, a picture of them all laid out all over my desk once they come in anyways. If you guys are looking to round out your collection, of course, as always, Top Deck TCG is a great place for you guys to buy singles, and you can use the promo code Golden Dice 10 to get 10% off your order. Another plug for Dirty Neighbors. Again, Dirty Neighbors game.com, and if you use the promo code Golden Dice, you get 40% off. Again, that's not Destiny related, but it is a very fun party game that you can really bust out with your friends and have a good time at. And I'm debating bringing it to Worlds. And we'll see how much Destiny stuff I end up packing, and if I have room for that game, I might bring it, so you can get a chance to play it there. And lastly, at Worlds, there's going to be a Night of Ren / Artificery meetup on Friday at a bar by there. So if you're looking for more information on that, you can check out Artificery, their website, or you can hop on Knights of Ren Discord or Artificery Discord and talk to them there. But I will be there, and I know a lot of other content creators and stuff like that are going to be there, so it's going to be a good time. All right, Tommy, hit us with your outro.
My outro is Boo Shane, World's not hype.
That was weak, dude.
Yeah, I know. It was terrible.
That was weak.
I'm sorry.